Good afternoon. It's my pleasure, privilege, and honor to welcome to the Googleplex Chris Anderson, head of TED and the author of the new book, TED Talks, the official TED Guide to Public Speaking. Chris Anderson studied at Oxford, and he studied politics, economics, and philosophy, and went on to work in a variety of news media. And at that point, there was no indication in his background of eventually career revolving around technology or public speaking. In 2001, his foundation acquired a little-known technology conference called TED. And over the years, what Chris and his team has done has transformed it one of the most powerful vehicles we know of today for bringing to light compelling ideas that actually change many things in humanity, in society, in our social condition, through short, well-articulated talks by some of the leading thinkers, original thinkers. And what Chris and his team have really done through this process is creating this amazing brand that serves up powerful ideas in thousands of videos and talks that you can see in person or through digital media. More than 1 billion views every single year. And this has given Chris this amazing opportunity to understand what is it that makes for a good talk that is well delivered, well articulated. He's had the ringside view of watching thousands of them over the years, working with thousands, tens of thousands of speakers, and drawing from them the best of ideas and presenting it to us. And therefore, it is really a privilege and an honor to hear from one of the best purveyors of this art of how to deliver a well-articulated talk, something that intimidates, baffles, mystifies most of us. So here to explain how to do it perfectly and get 1 billion views to each of your own talk, please help me welcome Chris Anderson.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much, Gopi. Thanks, guys, for coming out. As a group of employees, your work is probably as consequential as any group of employees anywhere in the world. So it means a lot that you've come out for the next hour or so. However, it's possible some of you are here under a bit of a misapprehension. I mean, it would be perfectly reasonable to assume that the guy who just published the official TED Guide to Public Speaking would himself be a great public speaker. So I think I need to start by telling you something that happened in Pakistan a few years ago. I went there, I gave a talk, I was born in Pakistan, and so after the talk, I was excited to rush online and see what my countrymen had to say about it, just how enthusiastically they had reacted. And this is what I read. Ouch. Even worse was what happened the first time I stepped onto the TED stage. I'm just going to show you a picture from back then. If you're feeling squeamish, please cover your eyes right now. Now, believe it or not, this is a man trying to build a natural human connection with his audience while wearing a wrinkled white t-shirt, a dorky haircut, and so nervous he can't even stand. So, if we could please agree, I'm actually not a natural public speaker. And so, of course, in preparing this book, I had to figure out a way of turning this bug into a feature. And so my argument became, listen, if this awkward plonker right here can somehow find a way to occasionally give a talk that is semi-effective, everyone can. That's the argument in the book. And funnily enough, even this talk, with all its cringeworthy faults, actually did turn out to be somewhat effective. And if I may, I'd just like to tell you what happened that day, because it does go to the heart of what's in the book and what I want to share with you now. So this was 2002. Back then, there were no TED Talks on the internet. TED was this once-a-year private conference. And this took place 3 months after my foundation had bought that conference. It was the last conference being hosted by TED's founder, Richard Torres, who's this charismatic figure. His personality really infused every part of TED. And I discovered, to my horror, that pretty much the entire TED community assumed that when he went, TED was dead. It could not survive him going. Reasonable assumption. And unfortunately, when you looked at the ticket sales for the next year, it was clear. TED usually sold out a year in advance, 800 passes, no problem. At this point, despite my best marketing efforts as the new owner, I had managed to sell a grand total of 70. So I was actually feeling pretty sick about this, and I felt I had one chance only, to try and persuade the community to come along. And so I took a deep breath and rolled my chair to the front of the stage and began making my case. And 15 minutes later, when I stopped speaking, 3 people stood up and started clapping. And then suddenly everyone was standing and clapping. And an hour after this talk, 200 people paid the big bucks to buy a pass for the next year's conference. And I suddenly, oh my, this is going to be okay. What on earth happened? How did that happen? Well, certainly wasn't the T-shirt. I think there were a few basics that happened. So first of all, I used my terror of the occasion as motivation to really prepare for it. I knew what I wanted to say, and I spoke from the heart with passion. And there was actually, let's get rid of that. Yeah, there was, despite that, there was something of a human connection built through a bit of humor and through a story of a business failure that I'd just been through. None of that, though, was the biggest thing. I think the biggest thing was this. I think during that 15 minutes, a strange object germinated and grew inside the minds of everyone listening, an object called an idea. In this case, it was the idea that the cross-disciplinary sharing of knowledge that happened at TED actually really mattered. It was the key to collaboration and innovation. Couldn't be allowed to die. And in fact, I was therefore going to convert TED to a non-profit, operate it for the public good. So that one idea was enough to persuade people that even without a charismatic host, TED was going to be just fine. They wanted to be part of TED's next chapter. And so this is the thing. It's all about the idea. Your sole job, really, as a speaker, is not to entertain or tell a story, promote your organization, your cause, whatever. It's to give your audience a gift in the shape of an idea that you transfer from your mind to theirs, an idea about something that matters. Because if you can do that, you are changing their worldview. You are actually potentially changing who they are, their behavior, many years into the future. But what is an idea anyway? Well, they come in all sorts of shapes and sizes. I mean, really an idea is anything that changes how you see the world and how you're going to respond to the world. Ideas can be analytical, aesthetic, complex, simple. Here are some that have been shared on the TED stage. You know, if you could picture these ideas as they physically exist in your mind, they actually probably represent this tangle of literally millions of neurons constructed in a strange pattern. And the fact that that entire pattern can be transferred wholesale to people listening in just a few minutes strikes me as a real miracle. How on earth can that happen? Well, the truth is, it often doesn't happen very effectively. I mean, it's hard for it to happen. Most talks are a bust. I want to share with you, if I may, a TED talk I found on the internet. In this case, it's Ted Poe. He's a congressman from Texas. Here he is in action.
It is an honor to once again sponsor this Domestic Violence Awareness Month resolution. I want to commend Judge Green for working with me on this issue.
I mean, one tip that's not in the book is if you're going to give a really dull talk on a really important topic live on television, don't put your grandson in the row behind you. Don't do that. I mean, this poor kid. You know, this kid stands for all of us. There's so much public speaking, right? I mean, whether it's politics, business, church, university, so much of it is boring. And so nothing happens. There is no actual communication. It's a kind of tragedy. How do you break through that boredom and land an idea in a way that matters? Well, there's no one way to do it. There actually are no rules about this. There's certainly no formula. What I think there are tools that you can pick and choose from to make the talk that you want. And these tools are teachable. And if I may, I'd like to show a few of them to you in action. So here's one. You don't have to begin the first few minutes saying how very, very deeply honored you are and thanking everyone in sight. You know, it's nice to do, but for most people in the audience, that's just not the interesting thing. And we are all, as you of all people know more than anyone, we're living in an attention war. And you contain on your laps right now and in your pockets these dangerous weapons, lethal weapons called smartphones or laptops. Once those are out and in use, your chance of being effective are gone, you know? So you kind of have to try and grab people from the start. I want to show you Maysoon Zayed. She's a comedian. She suffers from cerebral palsy due to a botched medical procedure at birth. She walked up onto the TED stage literally shaking and swaying, but she opened her talk this way.
My name is Maysoon Zayed, and I am not drunk, but the doctor who delivered me was.
Boom! Right? Brilliant. She owned us with a single sentence. B.J. Miller from San Francisco began a talk about redesigning death with a whole lot of life.
Well, we all need a reason to wake up. For me, it just took 11,000 volts.
It's a wonderful man, wonderful talk. Artists can do this too.
You might want to take a closer look. There's more to this painting than meets the eye. And yes, it's acrylic painting of a man, but I didn't paint it on canvas. I painted it directly on top of the man.
So I'm not saying that literally in the first sentence you have to smack people between the eyes, but I really do think that within the first minute or so of speaking, you need to give people a sense of where you're heading with your talk and why they should come with you. I mean, after all, if you're going to build an idea in someone's mind, people are naturally a little skeptical about allowing a stranger to poke around inside their brain. The first, they need to find a way of trusting you a little bit. Well, how do you do that? Well, you can do it lots of ways. Anecdotes, bit of humor, a bit of vulnerability, but just looking at people like this is a key part of it. Your eyes have extraordinary powers. When two humans look at each other, their minds are literally syncing up. So don't give your eyes talk with your eyes buried in your notes or out into some middle space. You know, find a few friendly faces in the audience, talk to them conversationally. It makes all the difference. It's so powerful when you do that. Now, our minds are wired to love stories. Goes back to hundreds of thousands of years around campfires. And stories can make or break many a talk. So when Monica Lewinsky came to TED, she came under a mountain of fear, obviously because of the humiliation she had suffered in her early 20s. Now, a single story, in her case, worked its magic.
At the age of 41, I was hit on by a 27-year-old guy. He was charming, and I was flattered, and I declined. You know what his unsuccessful pickup line was? He could make me feel 22 again.
So that single story told Monica that the talk was going to be okay. And it told the audience that this was going to be great and that everyone was actually going to have a good time listening to her. But talks don't just have to be about letting everyone relax. They can actually set up your idea beautifully as well. So here's Ernesto Ciroli. He wanted to give a talk about the power of listening, the importance of listening. And so he started with a story about what happens when you don't. The setting here is a fertile valley in Zambia and a development aid project that went wrong.
Everything in Africa grew beautifully, and we had these magnificent tomatoes. In Italy, a tomato would grow to this size, in Zambia, to this size. And we could not believe. And we were telling the Zambians, look how easy agriculture is. When the tomatoes were nice and ripe and red, overnight, some 200 hippos came out from the river, and they ate everything. And we say to the Zambians, my God, the hippos. And the Zambia said, yes, that's why we have no agriculture here.
So from that, obviously, it's really natural to go on and begin explaining your idea. Because when you build an idea in someone's mind, the explanation is the tool that allows that. That's really what explanation is. And it's pretty hard to do well. It's amazing that we can do it at all. The key to it is to remember that you are building from elements that are already in your audience's mind. So you're using the power of language, but it's not your language, your jargon. It's their language, their concepts. That's the only way this can work. And one of the key tools to make it effective is to use metaphors, to find the right metaphor. Because what a metaphor does is it shows the shape of how these elements are to fit together. Let me describe science writer Jennifer Kahn to you. You know, she came to TED, she wanted to explain this hard topic, CRISPR, right? And what that was. It's a very important new biotechnology. She said it's as if you had a word processor for the genome. You can cut and paste any gene or any letter as you wish. So we know what a word processor is. You suddenly immediately get the power of this technology. So metaphors are crucial, and examples really matter as well because they cement an explanation. They show, you think you get it, you tell an example, and then it really lands, and that cements it into place. But if explanation is the building of an idea in someone's mind, persuasion first requires a little demolition. You have to take down something that's there that needs to be replaced by better ideas. And so one of the keys to persuading, I think, is to show people the implausibility, maybe the absurdity of the idea that you're trying to take down. Here's master persuader Dan Pallotta in action. He was trying to persuade us that we should rethink how much we pay people who work for nonprofits.
We have a visceral reaction to the idea that anyone would make very much money helping other people. Interesting that we don't have a visceral reaction to the notion that people would make a lot of money not helping other people. You want to make $50 million selling violent video games to kids, go for it. We'll put you on the cover of Wired magazine, but you want to make $500,000 trying to cure kids of malaria, and you're considered a parasite yourself.
I mean, if you can pull off a rhetorical home run like that, people are going to remember your talk for a very long time. Now, the stakes can be high at a talk, and so many speakers assume it's okay just to come and wing it. A couple of bullet points, I'm good to go. Actors rehearse, musicians rehearse, speakers should rehearse. For a talk that matters, they absolutely should. Tim Urban gave an amazing talk at the last TED about procrastination. It was hilarious, it was very insightful. And 3 weeks before, when he came to the TED offices to give us a preview, it wasn't that great. The talk wasn't there, it wasn't ready. Tim used his experience there, the stressful, horrible experience that was, as motivation to go through a bunch of rehearsals, and what he came up with in the end was mind-blowing. So I'm going to do something a little cheeky and show you some before and after footage of Tim Urban in action. So this starts in the TED offices, ends on the TED stage, where he tells this story of how, after procrastinating for a full year on his thesis, he had to write the whole thing in 3 days.
So the thing about, don't want to go there yet. So there's micro procrastination, as we talked about, and then there's macro procrastination. But the fact about them is they both have the same cause. So the next 72 hours was a blur, during which I wrote 90 pages and ran full speed, diving headfirst to hand it in just at the deadline. I thought that was the end of everything. But a week later, I get a call. It's the school. And they say, is this Tim Urban? And I say, yeah. And they say, we need to talk about your thesis. And I say, okay. And they say, it's the best one we've ever seen. That did not happen. It was a very, very bad thesis.
I mean, that difference between complete ownership of a talk and being owned by the talk, you know, it's night and day, and the difference between those two is rehearsal. So how do you actually give a talk? I mean, there are so many ways to do it. You know, a lot of TED Talks are given like this, just standing in front of an audience. There's a vulnerability to this. There's actually power in that, because audiences respond to that vulnerability. But some people find that, you know, a little nerve-wracking, and they'd rather have a lectern. Maybe they've got things they need to refer to. We used to be not okay with that at TED. I'm now fine with it, so long as speakers still look up and connect. Or you can walk a bit, if that helps you think. Sometimes it's good to take a moment just to pause between walking so that a point can land. And actually sitting is fine too. The late, great Oliver Sacks gave a wonderful talk, seated. And then again, why not leap around the stage if the mood takes you? There's no one way to do it. What matters is finding your way. Because here's the thing, when all is said and done, there is only one thing that matters in giving a talk. It's having something worth saying. And therefore finding the way of saying it, which is authentic to you. It was 10 years ago that something happened, and this is kind of ground zero for it. It was the flickering into life of online video, cheered on by a small army of kittens, admittedly. But most people at the time, for sure, thought it was, you know, kind of a gimmick. I see it now as public speaking's Gutenberg moment. From this moment, a speaker's words and ideas could ripple out across the internet to thousands, maybe millions of people. And that meant that this ancient art that was forged around our ancestors' campfires could suddenly go global. It could suddenly scale. So that is what has sparked, I think, a renaissance in public speaking. It's suddenly so much more worth everyone's time to figure out how to do this well. So I think you can make the case that there is a new skill for the 21st century that all of us need to pay really close attention to. The name I've given it in the book is presentation literacy. I think of it as public speaking adapted for the internet age. And I really believe it should be taught in every school. I don't think our kids are going to spend that much time, you know, writing letters to the editor or preparing written resumes. I think they're going to present themselves directly on video. I don't know what your theory of change is. Do you believe that a single idea can change the world? I mean, I do, but not if it stays in a single mind. You know, for a change to happen, that idea has to leak out from that mind to dozens of other people, perhaps hundreds of other people, perhaps millions of other people. This is the miracle of human culture, human society, that we can do this, that we can reimagine a different way and share it. And if enough people believe in that different way and get excited about it, that's when change happens. And so it's communication, but communication that shows the import of what is being communicated. And so often that is done best by this ancient human tool of looking, standing, waving arms, persuading, where people can feel the passion and the emotion and why it matters, and feel that sort of that pulse of, yeah, you know what? I get that, and that matters to me too, and I'm in, and I'm going to be part of this. And the tragedy of the present is that so often the conversation is dominated by people who actually don't have ideas that are that insightful. And so many of the people who do have something really important to share don't share it, either because they're just not confident in how to do it, or they're literally fearful of public speaking overall. So I would so love this to change. You guys are among the smartest in the world. Many of you have ideas that are literally capable of shaping the future. Share them. You know, they won't probably have their full impact unless you find the courage and the means to show why they matter and to really explain them and bring along other people with you. And by the way, it doesn't have to be this amazing new algorithm or some scientific discovery or whatever. I actually think this also applies in natural human settings. A wedding, the next wedding you go to, share a moment of meaning or joy. It can connect people in a way that's really beautiful and gives us all a little bit of hope. The way I see it, we humans are still huddled around a campfire. It's just that the campfire spans the whole planet. There it is, here we are. And maybe there's this moment where it's time for you to clear your throat, find the courage to stand and speak. I very much hope you do. Thank you so much.
So thank you, Chris. It was both hugely entertaining and fascinating and very thought-stimulating. And you started off by saying that one of the most important things in the talk is a powerful idea you want to communicate. And one of the most powerful ideas I took away is that even with all of the technology advancements, human beings still communicate most effectively by standing in front of the campfire, waving their arms, and the campfire is now global. So many of the people in this audience, not everyone wants to be a TED talker, the TED speaker, but pretty much everyone wants to be an effective communicator. They all have amazing ideas. So what is one thing that you would ask this audience to do based on the book and the vast experience, start doing tomorrow to start their journey?
Well, especially here in a room full of brilliant technologists, it's don't forget the human side of this. I mean, we are who we are. We're incredibly sophisticated machines. We don't understand fully how we work. We don't understand the level of complexity and nuance that happens in face-to-face human communication. Yeah. It's wild how many signals are exchanged. It's wild to me that when you put two humans and have them just look at each other, that their brains are literally syncing up. And so it's possible to forget that and to just assume that if you email someone at an obvious point, that it's done. No, persuasion, it takes time, and there's a human piece to it, and people need to want to come along. We're not very rational, logical people a lot of the time. It's in there, but it needs teasing out. So that means it's worth learning the nuances of explanation and persuasion and figuring out how to do it the right way. But I do think everyone can learn to do this. And I think the fear of public speaking is, it's understandable why it's there. It's because we're a social species and we're worried about humiliation. But you can get past that.
But the problem, as you indicated, is nobody teaches this formally. You said we should have it in schools, the form of communication, so it is not formally taught. And you arrive as adults in a workplace and realize that I'm not that effective at getting my ideas across. So how does one learn it in the midst of the career?
I think
besides reading the book, of course.
Well, that would help. Thank you. No, I think you learn by doing and by starting small. I mean, literally giving a talk to your smartphone in your bedroom is a good start, because you will learn things about yourself, and you go, oh my, do I really sound like that? And am I actually doing that? So you can start there. Talk to a few friends. If you can have a dinner party, invite people around, and make a case or tell a story effectively, then you can public speak. So it all comes from repetition and from taking it seriously. It's definitely not easy to, without real preparation, to just sort of stand up and speak from a few bullet points. That a few people can do that. Usually that goes horribly wrong.
And this is when the book, I think one of the most important points to make is the need to practice.
Yes. And
rehearse.
I think so. I think so. Obviously, it depends on the stakes of the talk. I mean, but do the calculation. I mean, there's, say there's 100 people coming to listen. Who are they? How much time are they investing in this? Well, it's worth you're putting in a fair fraction of that time to prepare. It's only fair. If you're going to account for 100 person hours of humanities time, you better put in a few of your own in preparation. And if the talk's being recorded and it's going to go out to another 5,000 after, well, multiply that up again. So I think that's part of it. It's just being respectful of the time that's out there.
So, and you said that even before you start practicing, you should have something worthwhile to say that makes it meaningful for the listeners to spend the time. And most people struggle with, how do I identify what is it that I want to communicate? What is my life's mission in articulating? Do you have a formula for unearthing that?
Definitely no formula. And it's definitely, so the trap, right, is that you're excited about the idea of speaking without having something good to say. And we're certainly very allergic to this at TED, of the people who really want to be a sort of a TED Talk star, but without the actual content that matters. But here, I mean, no one would be in this room if they weren't remarkable in some way. And so it's finding the piece that you want to focus on. Usually the problem is that people want to try and say too much in a talk. What is almost always more effective is to pick one thing and go deeper into it, so that you can say why it matters, you can explain it, you can give examples, you can show the sort of implications of it and where it might lead to. That's what makes the talk land. And I don't know, if you really don't know what you should be speaking about, then don't speak until you do. But it is worth having honest conversations with friends and trying to say, because we only see ourselves from the inside, right? You can be a remarkable person and not know that you're remarkable because you've always been you. Isn't anyone like this? No, actually everyone's not. You're special. But with an honest friend, you can figure that out.
With that in mind, so I'm going to ask you a question, and I'll give you the option to say I pass on this one if you don't. Since you said that when you're in front of an audience, you should have something meaningful and important to say. How would you rate our current presidential candidates on that index?
Well, TED is nonpartisan. So, but what I will say is this: is that one of the first rules of public speaking, if there is a rule, one of the first guidelines, principles, is to start where your audience are. A talk is like a journey. You start where they are and you persuade them to come with you on a journey. Donald Trump has been masterful at doing that. He spotted what many other politicians didn't spot, which is just how much fear and anger there is out there. And he started with them. He's right there. Like everyone felt that for the first time, here's a politician who gets me. That's extraordinarily powerful, and I think that goes a long way to accounting for the momentum that he's had. But there are many other pieces to public speaking. There's explanation of a complex topic or policy. There's sharing a vision for the future that is, inspiring and hopeful. There's persuading people to tap into their better selves. And I think different politicians out there have different strength, different abilities in both those elements, and also in different settings. So I think public speaking is going to be incredibly important over the next 6 months. It may determine all of our future, and it's not going to be just the politicians. We're in this age where any citizen can record themselves and a point they want to make, and their own passion and humanity, and on a technology like YouTube or whatever, that can explode across America and the world and may well change how people react. We're all in this.
So if that is the case, in many of the talks or many of the examples that you just showed us and you talk about in the book, people talk of the kind of ideas that come from sociology and the human condition, psychology. One of the challenge for this audience here is the topics that they're most passionate about, that they're best equipped to talk about, might be highly technical. How do you take, a very arcane technical topic and make it come alive?
So there definitely may be some topics deep in AI or machine learning or whatever that are really hard to, in 18 minutes, communicate to a general audience. But here's what I believe is, no matter who you are, it's really important that we are able to communicate to each other why we're passionate about what we're doing and why it matters and what other people should understand about it. So it's not necessarily all the details, but the implications and how it fits into the rest of what's going on actually really matter. So something like AI, I mean, it's such an important topic for the future of the world, both in the most thrilling ways and, if you believe some scenarios, in the most terrifying of ways. And that's a vital conversation that can't just be had among technologists. You know, the citizens need to be part of this conversation. And so people who can find a way of saying, you know, this is how you should think about what we're doing. You know, the reason why you shouldn't be terrified about machine learning is this, or why you should is this. And find that way of framing it, using metaphors, using whatever, you know, means you can to make it accessible to a general audience. I think that's really important, and people need to figure out how to do that.
Brilliant. And one of the stories I really liked in the book that alludes to that point is Richard Torres' case. And the fact that you said just about anybody can be a public speaker, but I'm still quite fascinated. On the one hand, you have Sheryl Sandberg, obviously senior executive at a big public corporation, does a lot of speaking. But tell us the arc of that story where you find a 12 or 13-year-old boy in the Maasai,
yes,
who also had a piece of technology, but
yes,
for his survival. And then you brought him onto the TED stage.
So my colleague Kelly Stetson and I were on a global tour looking for new ideas, new speakers to bring to TED. And in Nairobi, we were introduced to this terribly shy Kenyan boy who was sort of cowering in the corner. And you know, he grew up in a Maasai village, helping his family look after their flocks. And you know, they had this lion problem where they were being taken out by lions, and he'd often been out in the night trying to frighten them away with fire. And he used the power of technology to solve the problem. He taught himself electronics by kind of dismantling his parents' radio, and somehow figured out a way to construct using this. I think he found a motorcycle indicator and some solar cells and whatever. He made this getup that flashed lights at different points, because what he discovered was that what frightened lions was not light, but moving light. And so he built this device, and it worked. And so instead of villagers going out and hunting down the lions, they were fine. And this invention spread to other villages. And so we were dying to bring him to TED, but he was so nervous and he could hardly speak. And yet when you just took a bit of time with him and said, you know, piece by piece, tell us, Richard, and you'd find suddenly his face would light up with some moment of excitement that had happened. And you go, that's it. If you can say it that way, you have no idea how powerfully people are going to respond to you. And so he'd won a scholarship to a school in Kenya because of this invention, and they allowed him to give several practice talks, which is all part of it. And then he got on a plane for the first time and came to Long Beach, California, and gave this TED talk slotted somewhere between Bill Gates and Sergey Brin. And he kind of came onto the stage and looked up and spoke, and then he burst into this $1 million smile, and the whole audience, their hearts melted. And at the end of this story, they all just stood up and cheered. It was an amazing thing to see. So yes, if he could do it, anyone can give a talk.
So that is a fantastic example, but it also attracts the criticism that TED often gets, that the audience and the speakers are very elite, where they come from. And this is one exception. So how do you, if your concept is ideas worth spreading, good ideas exist in all population, not necessarily among an elite community. How do you democratize TED as a movement?
Well, the criticism's more relevant to the audience than to the speakers. I mean, for the speakers, we genuinely do try to pull the most interesting people doing powerful work from whatever part of the world. Most of the speakers who come to TED aren't particularly rich. A lot of them, you know, they're working in academia or science or whatever. The audience is rich, and we see it as our noble duty to take their money off them so that we can fund the rest of what TED does and distribute these ideas for free on the internet for all time. It's kind of the Robin Hood model of, you know, it's like, and please don't tell them. Please don't tell them. Don't mention this to Larry. But the journey of TED over the last 15 years has been one of trying to open it up, to make these ideas accessible to everyone, because ideas want to be free. They know no borders. They should be shared freely, and that's what we sought to do. We bring some fellows to TED who don't pay. We allow people to organize their own TED-like events with a TEDx license that is free. So we're definitely aware of that the importance of that, of democratizing this, because it is for everyone.
And from that perspective, getting everyone, the whole world, to be great public speakers is also part of the mission, I assume. And what I'm leading to is that what led you to write this book?
Yes, exactly. So what led me to write the book was the belief that ideas are everywhere and that we need to be sharing them and sharing them in a human way. I think everyone's, worried about this world where we're all obsessed by our screens and looking down the whole time, and we're entering this sort of texty world that's sort of exciting and interesting, but we're worried about the loss of human connection. And I think the fact that we can now, connect as humans. You can look down at your screen and you can see a human face speaking using all this ancient technology of speech. I actually find that really exciting, and I'm stunned at the possibility of what's happening through the next 5 years through things like Project Loon and these other initiatives to take broadband internet to the entire world. I think that is incredibly important, and but it's also a kind of an extraordinary social experiment, because we're going to go in just a few years to people who never had the internet to suddenly having anyone in the world there on their screen. So I think we need voices coming from everywhere. It's not just a few existing TED-type speakers. We want to find the inspiring, insightful voices wherever they are on the planet and help them find the way to inspire people. Because for the first time in history, you can inspire lots of people. If you've got something worthwhile to say, even if you live in a village in Kenya or wherever on the planet, you can reach out to hundreds, thousands of people around you, in language and using examples that are directly, deeply relevant to them. So let's figure out how to do it, because there's so much at stake in this future. And if we naively believe technology is going to make a better future, we're probably mistaken. We could easily sleepwalk into a future that we end up hating. It's all to play for. And I think by putting a deeply, profoundly, and powerful human technology at the heart of it, there's some hope and possibility in that.
And with those comments, you've just opened the Pandora's box. So I'm going to ask the audience, how many of you have a powerful idea that you'd like to speak about at TED? Okay,
all right.
So you've got about
Excellent.
8 people. What should they do, Chris?
Write to us. Tell us, what's the idea? Speakers@TED.com. Make the case. We get a lot of incoming, but we're always looking for the ideas that matter most. And in this room, probably more than most places on the planet, those ideas probably exist right now if you could only see them. If I could go away with a brain scan of everything that's going on in this room right now, I'd probably know the future. I could. Who's got a question?
Hi. So my name is Greg. My question, so recently Barack Obama said that his greatest regret is that they failed to communicate what they were doing during each crisis, that they were solving the next crisis and they didn't have time but he made addresses, and my question is, what would you have changed to the format, to the style? What would you have recommended they do differently?
Oh gosh, I wouldn't try for a minute to give any advice to Barack Obama. And I mean, the level of challenges that modern government faces are just extraordinary. I think it just goes back to principles, though, of you have to know where people are. And it's hard. We all suffer from the curse of knowledge, where you don't remember what it's like not to know what you know. It's a bug. And to get around it, it just takes an intense effort. So that's all you can do, is constantly say, what does that person think? What do they really think? What do they feel? How do I recognize that? And then build from that. But it's not, there's no slicks, there's no silver bullet to that. It's hard.
Hi, my name is Blake. You're a journalist. Now, in the course of my lifetime, I've seen journalism change substantially. When I was a child, there was a very limited number of geographically limited news sources. Then cable news was born, then blogging and Twitter. And as it has transitioned into a much more financially competitive environment, I've seen journalism go from the admittedly drier transmission of facts to a much more exciting, personalized world of echo chambers. Do you see this trend continuing, or will journalism shift yet again into something new? What is the future of journalism?
Yeah, no, great and complex question. I certainly think that the traditional business models are challenged. Like the notion that you can build a company that pays professional wages to a group of journalists, put the output onto the internet, get enough traffic to pay for the, and therefore ad revenue to pay for their salaries. No one is really doing that very effectively right now, just that model, simply because it turns out that there are so many other people out there who love to write. There are so many other choices now for what someone could read. 99% of it is poor, but 1% of it is actually quite amazing and often unexpected. And that 1% is still dwarfs the total output of the paid journalists. So it's definitely a problem. And you've seen business models like Huffington Post and many others like basically tap into the mass willingness to write for free to make an effective business model. I don't see that per se as going away, and I think a lot of journalists probably could do with imagining themselves as curators and coaches and accepting that they're not going to do all the writing, but that they can filter and they can provide and see the journalistic talent in other people. And so, certainly if I was running a traditional news site, that's what I would try and do, is you've got to find a way of tap into the extraordinary willingness of many people to participate. As for the whole echo chamber bit and the whole sort of personalization bit, I mean, I think the key thing that's driving that is the fact that, that these companies running algorithms to find what are the most clickbaity stories. And that is having the effect of dragging the internet down market faster than 1,000 Rupert Murdochs. It's very distressing, actually. And I think what many people don't see is, I think our view of human nature is wrong. People see this is what people want. No, it's what people's lizard brain wants. People are complicated. They have many things going on in there. The lizard brain is one thing, and the lizard brain drives that clicking finger, unfortunately. But it's not the only thing. It's not the only part of people's identity. And so there's another whole part of the internet, which is where people share based on their identity. And that is actually tending to promote much more valuable stories, shall we say. And I think there's huge power here, actually, in this company, to shape what happens online and to understand that humans are complex people, and to have a personalization strategy that is much richer than just what the damn lizard brain does. People's reflective brains should be given a chance to shape what they want to read. And that means asking the question in a different way. It means not just observing what people actually click on. It's saying, okay, what kind of experience can we give you? May we have your permission to sometimes put in front of you stuff that might provoke you, and not just satisfy that little twitchy finger of yours. And I think most people would actually say yes to that. Yes, please, save me from my lizard brain. So, I think it's all to be paid for. So finally, what I'd say is that I think journalism, which at its best is the pursuit of truth, right? I mean, that's such an important, in the knowledge age, there's hardly a more important thing to do. And I think it's going to get funded much more by philanthropy in the future. I think it's a really noble philanthropic thing to do to finance. For example, here's the news site which is shutting out all the sort of commercial pressures to do stories for certain reasons. We're going to write the stuff that actually matters from whatever lens. And I think there's some great examples of that. It's going to be a lot more of that.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Hi, my name's Jamie. Just want to say, first of all, thanks a lot for coming. Great talk. I've been a fan of TED for a while. I actually organized a TEDx event while I was at college, so a big fan. One of the things I've noticed, though, and speaking to other people, I think they've noticed as well, you spoke about the democratization of TED and being nonpartisan. But one of the things I have noticed is that, there does seem to be a pretty strong ideological slant to the talks that are on the front page. And I wonder if you agree with that characterization, and whether you see that as a challenge or something that needs to be addressed. Because there may be a risk there of it becoming either kind of humdrum or some people feeling in some way, excluded. And maybe the idea is not truly challenging you if they come from a place where, there's a lot of agreement already.
No, it's a great question, Jamie. And first of all, thank you for doing it in TEDx. That's great. I think about this a lot. I mean, we want the best ideas from wherever they are. Speaking personally, there's not a political agenda. Like if you could define what the radical center looks like, then I might put myself personally that way. But there's people at TED who come from most parts of the spectrum. Yes, I think the majority in the audience traditionally at TED, and I think this is what you're referring to, are, if you like, have a sort of progressive type agenda, and you sometimes see that in the talks. I would, if you could hear us internally, we are constantly on the search for great outside-the-box ideas from the right, from all parts, honestly, of the political spectrum. Mainly what we're trying to do, actually, though, is find talks that aren't locatable somewhere neatly on the political spectrum. Because the trouble with politics is that it provokes these sort of trigger reactions from people. People stop listening once they think you're kind of speaking, this is tribal. So we want talks that are just great ideas, so that's the journey that I think we're on and that I want us to be on. But I absolutely, if anyone's listening to this and you think you're on a different part of the political spectrum from what you think TED normally represents, suggest to us, what is the compelling idea that the world needs to know about from your lens? Because we really want to know it. So I thank you, and keep pushing for that extra diversity. We're looking for it. It's a conversation.
Cool, thanks.
Hello, my name is John. Do you have any advice for people whose English is not their first language? And what is TED doing to bring in ideas from non-English speaking people?
Yes, absolutely. We're committed to increasingly getting talks from non-English speakers. There are already quite a few. The TEDx initiative, many of those events are not held in English. So those talks are being recorded and uploaded. So they exist. What we're trying to do slowly is bring together more of them. So in this coming year, we have an initiative on Spanish where we're going to try and produce a critical mass of sort of Spanish talks. And so I think we've done a good job so far of translating TED and subtitles into many other languages. We're in pretty much 100 languages now. But the next step is doing a much better job of sourcing non-English talks. We're on it.
Hi, my name's Zack. I was wondering if you had any advice or things to say about stage fright, if you learned to speak with stage fright, or try to get the stage fright to go away, or whatever it may be.
Yeah, so absolutely. I think for me the first thing is renaming that fear in your mind and making it an asset. Fear is there for a reason. It's to persuade you to act, to avoid that fearful thing coming true. So use it as motivation to prepare and to do what's needed. So that's step one. Step two is to know that, with rehearsal, your kind of confidence can grow, and that it's possible to just shift that fear from fear to excitement. Feelings are actually quite similar. Third is just, even on stage, it can actually give you an extra edge. It can sort of, dial up your energy in the moment. And if you feel like you're losing it and you're sort of shaking and whatever, just have an honest conversation with the audience. People respond to it. Audiences are fundamentally supportive. There's other things like doing some physical activity right before, breathing deep, all those kinds of things, and having a couple of sort of escape clauses where you've got a bottle of water and some notes off to the side, and you can always bring on a little coughing fit and go over and have a drink of water and remind your notes and calm down. But audiences actually often see nervousness as vulnerability and actually rise to that person. They embrace that speaker more. So long as you can keep that authenticity there. So it's absolutely overcomable. Pretty much every speaker feels a level of nervousness. It's only in a few that it's crippling, but even there it can be overcome. And if Monica Lewinsky can do it, you can too.
Okay, thank you to the audience. I want to close off with two final questions, Chris. One is, all of the examples that you showed, many of the examples you talk about in the book, humor is a big part of it. Making people laugh makes you endurable as a speaker. And that's also a big fear for almost everyone who feel that we are not naturally funny. So how do you bring humor in when you think that I'm not a funny guy?
Well, I think I'm not a funny guy, and so what I did...
You're British, so you've got a natural advantage.
what I did was I found some funny videos, like Share the Load, right? And they're actually, when you look at several really popular talks on TED, an early moment of humor comes not directly from the speaker, but from something that they showed. Yeah. So I totally cheated with this. You don't have to actually have humor. Humor is great. It does open people up a bit, and it helps people feel like they've got a connection with you. But there are other ways to do that. Just being honest with people, being vulnerable, telling a story about a failure of yours or whatever. You can connect with people in lots of different ways. I would say the only thing you really can't do in a talk is come on and kind of a blowhard of, let me tell you the reasons I'm so great, and I've had such amazing success over the last few months. I'm just going to tell you a few examples. Everyone hates that, and that as soon as people get the sense this is about you, not about them, that doesn't work. So it's worth trying to find the humorous moment, because if you can find it, it will give you more confidence in the talk, and it just helps everyone relax. But it's not the only way. And bad humor is to be avoided. That's worse than no humor.
So my final thoughts around what you've done, going beyond the book, is it's not simply a conference that you created. You created an amazing institution, a legacy, in an era where the art of this form of communication is dying out. TED as a brand has revived the art of public speaking, and it's become a global platform through which many people are expressing themselves. And you use digital technology to great effect to really take it to all corners of the world. What is your vision for TED and TEDx, and next 5 years, what can we expect to see, or 10 years?
I mean, it's honestly being driven by the technological revolution that's coming. Like, if you really believe that broadband video is coming to every part of the planet, that gives us our roadmap. That means 4 billion people are coming online and leapfrogging straight to an internet where there's video. It's thrilling, it's also terrifying. And so I think that the TED Talk you want to put in front of them is not necessarily Sir Ken Robinson, much as I love him. It's something that is relevant to them now. And it's going to be competing in this incredible war with who knows what, all these new marketing things that they've seen for the first time, terrorist recruitment videos, for all I know. We've got to get this right. And so that plus a big push in education are the two sort of new things. And meanwhile, trying to welcome as many new, fresh voices onto the platform. The joyful thing about knowledge is different from ice cream, right? I love strawberry ice cream. The first spoonful is delicious. The second, not quite so much so, but okay. Knowledge actually goes the other way. The more you learn, the more wondrous the world seems, the more you want to know the next thing. And so I find that honestly really, really exciting. And I think the fact that we have the chance now to lead lives that are lifelong learning, that's amazing and thrilling. And it's really, I feel so fortunate to be just playing this little part of it.
Yeah, and that's a great opportunity and a problem to solve for the future, imagining what it could be like. And I can bet somewhere in the audience, someone is willing to give a great TED Talk on that.
I bet that is true.
Any closing comments and thoughts? One final piece of advice as it relates to the book?
The book's the book. I mean, to you guys here at Google, it's extraordinary what you've built. It has enabled everyone's work to be completely different from what it could be. It's transformed education's potential in ways that no one even recognizes yet. The fact that we're in a world where everyone has The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy in their pocket, and actually all they need is curiosity to find out anything. You know, it's absolutely stunning. What YouTube is stunning to me. The fact that you can show everyone on the planet what the best people in any given field can do, from skateboarding to giving an idea. It's mind-blowing to me. And so, you know, I know you work for a company of immense power and impact, but where that goes, you know, it's going to have a huge impact on the world's future. And I know you constantly are thinking about this and how to make sure it goes the right way and not the wrong way. Thank you for doing what you do. It really, really matters, and it's been a real privilege to be here today. So thank you.
And Chris, I wanted to say thank you for what you've created. Thank you for writing the book. Thank you for coming to Google. It's been our honor and pleasure. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Gopi. Thank you so much.